Good morning or good afternoon, depending on what part of the country. Oh, no, it's still morning for everybody now that I'm in Central Time Zone.
Oh, there we go.
Thanks for
Hello,
joining us, Antonio.
Antonio.
Hello, LinkedIn user that just said, hey, everyone, what's your name? Hi, Noni. Great attitude, Noni. Welcome, David.
Oh, David said, good afternoon. Where are
Man,
you?
I'm wondering where he's at.
Right.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are at the top of the hour. We know we have some other people logging in. We do want to honor you. So we will take just about one more minute. Then what we'll do is we'll pause briefly on our comments, our conversations. Miss Via is our producer. She will start the recording. That way you will receive the recording as well as some gifts that we're going to be giving out today. And please put your contact information. If you would like our free gifts, you're going to want to put your contact information in the chat box. And that way, Miss Via can send you a copy of the recording in case something pops into your mind. You go, what did Guy say about that? So we will be sending you a copy of the recording once it renders, as well as some free gifts that I think you're going to really like. So we are at 2 minutes after we will start. So we've got about another 30 seconds. We will pause, start the recording, and then we will be going with today's podcast. Thank you for joining us. All righty. Yes, and our producer just put a comment in the chat box. If you don't want to put your contact information out for everybody, Miss Via, you can email her directly. Thanks for joining us, Miss Marilyn. You can email her directly at info@govcontractors, and she will get you the recording as well as the free gifts for today. We're going to go ahead and start the recording. Start recording. Please ask all guests to stay in the studio, blah, blah, blah. And uploading. I think we're recording. This is a new platform for us, by the way, folks. So, Miss Via, can you make sure that I did the recording thing right? This is a newer platform for us. We switched from a different platform, and so bear with us for any minor technical challenges we have. So thank you for joining the Learning Government Contracting podcast. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what government contracting involves. By the time you've heard us, I think that you're going to have a good feel for if it's a journey that you want to start. Some of you I know are already doing some government contracting, just starting out a little bit of it. Some of you have won some contracts, but want to learn a little bit more. And so we appreciate everybody who is here. So the majority of our clients are small businesses, and by small business, the government's definition is a little bit different. So small businesses, you can be doing $2, $3, $4, $5 million, and they'll still be considered a small business to the government. So we appreciate you being here. We know that small businesses work really, really hard. Everybody at GCA is or has been a small business owner, and we know what it takes to launch a business. I personally have started 4 businesses over the last 30 years, and I know how much work it takes. I know it's a lot of hard work, but we do create magic. In fact, the government knows that small businesses drive the economy. Well over 50% of the tax revenue comes from small businesses and their employees, as well as the fact that the government cannot exist without small businesses like yours. But it is time to get some of our money back. We pay a lot of it to the government, and there's a lot of contracts out there that the government would like to award to small contracts. So let's take a look at how you guys can start winning those contracts. So who's on the call today? We have different types of people who join us on the call. We have capture managers. For those of you who are newer to the government space, a capture manager is simply a sales rep in the government space. In the commercial market, we often call them business development reps or account reps or sales reps. As you know, the government loves their vernacular and acronyms and terms. So capture manager is simply a term for sales reps in the government space. And a lot of times we'll have capture managers who are already doing sales in the government space. They will join us on these calls because they know no matter how much they know, there's more information out there. So they'd like to get new information. But also, we offer a certification in the industry that nobody else in the country does. And so sometimes capture managers join us to get that certification. The majority of the people that we work with are small businesses, companies who would love to win government contracts or who have started on that journey but feel like they need a little bit of help. We often have business owners and HR managers. Because we are an association of government contractors, quite often a business owner will come to us or an HR manager will say, hey, we're looking to hire a new sales rep or capture manager, as the case may be. Do you guys have any recommendations? Do you have anybody who you have certified? And so we'll have those type of people on the call today. So the question that is always in everybody's mind, and it was on my mind when I took this class back in 2017, is will you win contracts? And the answer is that depends on your strategy. And that's true of almost everything in your real world life as well as your business life. Having a clear, clean strategy is going to be absolutely critical. The other side of that is execution. And we're going to talk about once you have a clear, clean strategy, what are the steps to execute? We're going to show you some tools for execution as well. There's about 22,000 associations in the United States now, and all of them have one goal in mind, and that's to help their members become more successful. There's associations for IT people. There's associations for building contractors and electricians and just about anything you can imagine. There's an association. There's logistics associations and HR associations, and all of them want their members to be more successful, and we're no different. We've been doing this now for about 15 years, and we've helped a lot of people win a lot of money. So the question that when somebody says, will I win a contract? If you follow our system, go through the programs and follow the system, the question is not if, the question is when you'll win a government contract. So our first early bird gift for those of you who are here now, we always say thank you for joining us early. Let's see, I got a text. I want to make sure it's not somebody who is joining the call. No, it's not. I wanted to make sure we didn't have anybody trying to get into the call. So the first gift that we want to offer you is an early bird gift. And that is for being with us by 5 minutes after. A lot of things happen in the government space where being prompt is absolutely critical. And so one of the things that we work with our students is to teach them timelines that the government uses. Hey, Marcos, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sharing your email, Mr. Antonio. So this is a self-checklist that you can do, and you go right through it. Am I properly registered in SAM? Not just registered, but am I properly registered? There's a lot of steps in SAM registration, and sometimes we see people forget to mark certain areas, and it makes it harder for them to win contracts. Am I registered in DSBS, Dynamic Small Business Search, set up by the SBA? Am I registered there? Do I have a clean profile? You go right through this checklist. Do I have my UEI already? Do I have any certifications that I qualify for? For example, I'm a service-disabled veteran. You can see my submarines behind me. So what types of certifications? So you go through this checklist, and the more of these you can answer yes to, the better chance you have of winning contracts. So any of you who puts your email in the chat or sends your email to our producer, Miss Via, at info@govcontractors.org, you will receive not only a copy of the recording, but you'll receive this gift as well as other gifts that we're going to be giving throughout the day. So we do have some free gifts for those of you who are able to stay with us until the end. So if you're going to hitch your wagon to somebody and you say, okay, I think these guys might be able to help me win contracts, you ought to know a little bit about us. Well, our founder is named Abraham Zhang. He's a small business advocate, a business coach. He's an author, a speaker, a member of National Speakers Association. And he moved to the United States when he was 7 years old. His family lived in a country called Laos over by Thailand. And when communist China invaded Laos, his family fled. And they came across the Mekong River. It was very dangerous. It was mom and dad and 5 little children, and two more would come along later. And they got across the Mekong and they had no idea where they were going to go. Fortunately, a church group up in Ohio sponsored them as refugees to come to the United States. And they got here to the country. They didn't speak the language. They had the equivalent of about 20 US dollars in their pocket and no idea what they were going to do. But fortunately, this church group loved on them, helped them find housing, helped them find employment, and the family flourished and did very, very well here. And so it kind of shaped who Abe was. Here are strangers who took him in, a country that he knew nothing about, and they loved on him. And so he decided as he was growing up, he was always going to give back. Love of country and love of helping others. He's never actually had a job, unlike most of us who got a job in high school at some point. When Abe was a teenager, right out of high school, he started a baseball card and comic card shop, and he's been a lifelong entrepreneur. So got out of high school, started a comic book shop, baseball card shop, ran that for a couple of years, sold it, and went back to Thailand. His goal was to go into Laos to spread the gospel, the things that he had learned from the church growing up in Ohio. Unfortunately, when he got there, the communists still had the borders closed. So he stayed in Thailand for a while, did missionary work, but as most of you probably know, missionaries don't get paid. They have to raise their own funds. And his heart wasn't really in it. He wanted to be in Laos. He wanted to share the gospel in his native country. So he came back to the States with about $300 in his pocket. And he followed a system very similar to Amazon. The reason Amazon grew so fast is when they started selling books, they would sell you a book for $20. You would pay the $20. They would go to the publisher and they would pay $15 for the book. They got the money before they paid for it. Abe did the same thing. He understood the principle of Amazon before Amazon did it. And so he started selling furniture he didn't have. Then he went out and sold the furniture, grew that company to over $10 million. He loves growing business. He sold that for sold it with over $10 million of inventory plus all of the revenues. And he started doing real estate investing, was doing incredibly well in real estate investing. And then 2007, 2008 hit when the bubble burst. And he had a lot of properties that were partway invested or partway rehab. Some of them were already ready to sell, but the bank stopped loaning money. So he was financially struggling. He was really in trouble financially, didn't know for sure what he was going to do. And he had a very nice office in Atlanta area where GCA is. And he was going through the conference room one day, and there was a gentleman sitting there who had just wrapped up a meeting. So they struck up a conversation. And Abe asked him, "What do you do?" And he said, "Well, I'm a retired contracting officer. I was in the Army for 27 years. In the last 11 years, I was awarding contracts. And I've awarded about $5 billion in contracts." He said several times, though, companies submitted proposals, and I really wanted to give that company the contract. I thought they would have done a good job for us. They were a small business, and I really would have liked to work with them, but they didn't dot their I's and cross their T's. And he said, as a contracting officer, we have to follow what's called the Federal Acquisition Regulation. So I would see opportunities missed by businesses. So I want to start plugging those holes. And Abe said, "Well, how's it going?" And contracting officer said, "Well, I've been out for about 4 months now, and I don't have any clients yet." So Abe, well, how are you marketing? He said, "Well, when I got out, I had a website built." "Okay, but how are you marketing?" "Well, I have a website." Well, it doesn't quite work that way. You have to let people know the website exists. You have to interact with people. So unfortunately, it didn't work. It wasn't working for him, and he was really frustrated. And then he asked, "Abe, what do you do?" He said, "Well, I've been doing real estate investing, but my passion is building businesses. I've built several already." And, the little light bulb came on top of both of their heads, and they're like, "Maybe we should work together." And so for the next 3 years, that's what they did. They did consulting in the government space. Abe learned an amazing amount about the government space. The contracting officer was learning about marketing and building his revenue. After about 3 years, contracting officer said, "I just want to retire for good this time. I'm going to go play golf." So Abe bought him out and turned it into Government Contractors Association. So it went from a consulting firm to an association. And we need to update this number here. It says over 1.5 billion. But since last we did this presentation, we had another couple of clients get some nice contracts. We've helped companies win over $2 billion. Just let's put that in perspective. 1 million seconds is 12 days. 1 million seconds is 12 days. A billion seconds is 32 years. That's the difference between a million and a billion. We can't even conceive $1 billion, really. We can get $1 million. Our houses sometimes are worth $500,000 or $1 million or $750,000. We can kind of conceive $1 million. We can't even conceive $1 billion. It's 1,000 million or 32 years. We've helped companies win over $2 billion in government contracts. Now, because of Abe's heart, as I told you that he's passionate about helping others, he is a recipient of the President Obama's Lifetime Achievement Award, the Global Humanitarian Award, and Brian Kemp, who is the governor of Georgia right now, when he was Secretary of State, he asked Abe to be a goodwill ambassador for the state of Georgia. So that's a little bit about the heart of GCA and who drives us. So why is Abe not doing the presentation today? Well, he's president of a pretty busy company. So a little bit of background about me is when I was young, I was almost always the last kid picked. And I got picked on a lot. I was bullied. I was a little bit awkward. I have a funny name, Guy Burns. And my dad was cheap, so he buzz cut my hair, so I never had any hair. I just had a little stubby hair. And I was always really small. My mom was really short. And until about fourth grade, I was always the smallest kid in class. Fortunately, I hit a little growth spurt there around third or fourth grade, and I got to be the middle of the class. But, the early grades, I was picked on unmercifully. And I never really understood how that changed or shaped my outlook in life until I started studying psychology. And in psychology, our life experiences shape how we see the world. And so I always want to see the little guy win. I always want to see the underdog win. If I'm watching a basketball game or a football game and somebody's really far behind, I hope they catch up. Or if I'm getting ready to watch a game and I know somebody's a 10-point favorite, I hope the underdog wins. If it's not one of my teams, if it's one of my favorite teams, I hope my favorite team wins. But so I've always wanted to help the little guy. I got out of high school, didn't go to college, went right into the Navy, was a nuclear electrician. Again, you can see my submarines behind me. And when I got out of the Navy, all I knew how to do was electrician, so I did electrical work. And I realized that I did better as an entrepreneur than as an employee. So I started my own electrical service and handyman business, did that for quite a while. And I started taking a lot of sales and marketing classes to figure out how to grow my handyman business and electrical service business, and realized that I liked wearing nice clothes and doing sales calls more than I liked crawling through attics and under houses. So I started studying more and more of sales and marketing. Now, I also, like Abe, although we wouldn't meet each other for another 10 years, I also went into real estate investing. I was still running my electrical service and handyman business. I was actually helping some other companies with their sales and marketing. And then also I was running my real estate investing business. And just like Abe got caught up in that 2007, 2008, I had 14 properties when the bubble started bursting. Fortunately, I got rid of most of them, but I still had some real financial challenges at that time. But I decided that it was time that I really wanted to be a full-time speaker and trainer. I loved helping people. I had always loved doing training. When I was in the Navy, I was the lead trainer for new electricians, and I had always enjoyed that. So I thought, okay, I've studied sales and marketing enough that I'm going to start helping other companies. And that's a journey that I've been on since 2003. I started the company in 2003, but I didn't really start doing it full time until after the housing bubble burst. I've been a coach, a speaker. I've had the opportunity to speak in 12 countries and 4 continents now. Over 100,000 people have seen my presentation, and I absolutely love helping other people. In 2015, I was speaking at a conference. A lady came up to me and she said, I have a business that wins government contracts training government employees. Would you be interested in teaching principles, leadership and communications and team building principles to government employees? I said, well, they take enough of my money. I'd love to get some of it back. So that's what I did. I started working with her for the next 2 years. She would email me. Actually, her assistant, Mary Beth, would email me whenever they got a contract. So they might say, we have a contract to do training for GSA in Washington State, or we have a contract for consumer protection up in Washington, D.C. Or one of the rough ones I had to do was doing training for the Marine Corps down in Hawaii. That was awful, having to go down there. And it was really cool since my son lived there too. He's in the Navy and he was stationed there at the time. So I did that for about 2 years. And I noticed she was getting busier and busier. When I first started working with her, about once a month, she would email me and say, "Are you available on May 17th?" And I was doing about one day a month along with my other coaching, my other clients. And then she got busier in 16. By 17, she was asking me for at least a day a week instead of a day a month. So I gave her a call and, "What's going on, Ellen?" And she said, "Well, I took a class at the Government Contractors Association, and I realized there were a lot of holes in my marketing, a lot of holes in my proposal strategy, and I was missing contracts that I shouldn't have been." She said, "My business has tripled now since I've taken that class last year." And I said, "Well, you're a woman-owned business. I'm a service-disabled veteran-owned business. Why don't we start bidding contracts together?" She said, "I'd love to do that with you, Guy, but I want you to take the class first because I don't have time to teach you everything that I just learned in the last year. And so you take the class. Once you get certified, come back and talk to me, and we'll look at bidding on contracts together, doing teaming or joint ventures. We'll figure out how to do some contracts together." So took the class, fell in love with the people, the process, the energy over at GCA. And when I was wrapping up, I told Abe, the president of the company, "Hey, I speak at big conferences. I also coach small businesses. I do small business training. Some of my clients should be winning contracts. Do you have a referral program?" He said, "Of course, almost everybody has a referral program. So you refer people to us and we'll obviously, give you a little bit of a finder's fee for us. But are you interested in coaching our clients? Since you're already a business coach, if you'd like to go through our coaching program and get certified as a coach with us, then you could make some extra income and it would help us out because we have more clients than we can coach." So I did that process and really never looked back. I had to do it part-time for several years because a lot of GCA's classes were being done in person in Atlanta. And so I was supporting people during the week. In the evening, I was checking their homework. I was answering questions for them after I got certified. And then when 2020 hit and COVID hit and I couldn't fly to all my clients anymore, and half of my clients were in England, so I really was struggling, I started working with GCA more and more. And now they are my primary client. I still have a few clients I support that I've been working with for over a decade, but GCA is where my heart and passion is for helping small businesses like yours. So what you're going to learn today: how to win government contracts without spending 3 years spinning your wheels. Statistically, most companies, they think, okay, maybe this is the year I'm going to win contracts. They go on YouTube, they watch a few videos, they buy a book, they download a couple of white papers, and they go, okay, I got this. And then they take off and try to figure it out. And unfortunately, the good thing or the bad thing about government contracting is there's a lot to it. The bad thing about that is it's not that easy just to jump into it. The good thing about it is it narrows the competition. If it was easy, everybody would do it. There's millions and millions of businesses in the United States. And most of them never even try to get into government contracting because they just think it's too hard. And it really isn't if you have the right guide and the right process. So do government agencies really need you? And the answer is yes. There's about 85,000 government entities. Oh, come on, Guy. How can there be 85,000? Well, obviously, we have one federal government, 24 departments, and 100 sub-agencies. So Health and Human Services has 12 sub-agencies. DOD has over 20 sub-agencies. So a lot of your main departments and agencies have several sub-agencies. Then obviously we have 50 states, 3,000 counties, 36,000 cities, 14,000 districts, 31,000 special districts. And the special districts go up and down. Sometimes the government will want to put money into an area that's economically depressed. Back in the early 2000s, when I was doing real estate investing, the government dumped $11 billion into downtown Detroit to help revitalize it. It was a special district for 5 years. So there's a lot of special districts that are formed. They come, they last for 2, 3, 5 years, but they all need to buy products and services from you. We have 5 U.S. territories like Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico's, things like that. And Uncle Sam really does want you to take his money. The government cannot function without you. The federal government's the world's largest customer. It's literally open to everybody, and they buy almost everything. Before we train anybody, we interview you. We interview each person that wants to come into our training program or our membership program and make sure you have something the government does buy. but it's relatively rare that I meet somebody that doesn't have a product or service that the government needs to buy. I would say it's probably 1 in 200 or 300 that I meet. They go, okay, that's, there's probably not going to need that product or service. You just don't have anything to offer for them. So what are some of the hottest industries? Obviously, IT is hot everywhere. Cybersecurity is blowing up. Network services, custom programs. The government is constantly needing new things. Last year, they spent around $32 billion, about 107,000 contracts, and the average value was about $300,000. They're constantly, obviously, building new buildings, updating the current buildings that they have. Last year was about $28 billion, 137,000 contracts, and the average contract was a couple $100,000. Realizing that some of those might have been $10,000 or $15,000 repair jobs, just something that was small that needed to be done, and some of them might have been $10 million buildings. But the average contract was a couple $100,000. And this is one that surprises a lot of people. Janitorial and facilities was 19, almost $20 billion, but it was only 41,000 contracts, and the average contract was almost $500,000. And you go, why, guy? Why is janitorial and facilities management so big? Well, think about it. If you're a government contracting officer for a complex, it could be a military base, it could be a civilian complex, and it has 10 buildings on that complex. They don't want to get 10 janitors. They want one janitor. And that janitor is responsible for all the buildings. And you might be thinking, well, I'm a pretty small business. I can't clean 10 buildings. That's okay. We want you to make money, OPE, other people's efforts. The system, the way that the government is set up, is they know that a lot of the businesses can't do it on their own. Over 70% of all government contracts are carried out by more than one government contractor. There's a lot of strategies for teaming, joint venture, subcontracting, where you can work with other government contractors or even companies who don't want to get into government contracting, but they wouldn't mind doing some of the work. We can teach you strategies that you could do a large contract without having to have a mass amount of people. It's all understanding the strategies and the principles in government contracting. So why would you do government contracting? You've probably heard that it's kind of a pain in the butt, and it absolutely is. You got to dot your I's, cross your T's. It is a lot of work, but commercial work is a lot of work. If it was, again, if your industry was easy, everybody would be doing it, and we'd all be living on the beach eating bonbons. But imagine having access to $700 billion. That's what the government awards the private sector companies like yours and mine every year. Over $700 billion. Again, we can't even conceive 1 billion. Remember, 1,000,000 seconds is 12 days, and 1 billion seconds is 32 years. This is 700 billion. That would be 21,000 years to count at $1 at a time. So it is amazing amount of money. That's about 1.9 billion each hour, 80 million or 1.9 billion each day, 80 million each hour, 1.3 million each minute, 22,000 each second. We've been on the call for about a half hour now. That means statistically, the government has awarded about $40 million in contracts since we got together here at the top of the hour. So last year, there were a little over 6 million contracts awarded to private companies. The average contract was almost $112,000. Now, there's about 600,000 contractors in what's called System for Award Management, or SAM.gov. So one of the requirements for you to do business with the federal government is you have to be registered in SAM. About 600,000 companies have registered. Less than half of them have ever won a contract. Because again, they go to YouTube, they read a book, it says step 1, get registered in SAM. Okay, great, let's get registered in SAM. Now what? And it says, well, go bid on a contract. Well, you don't even know where to find them. Well, go here and find them. So you find one, but you don't know how to read it. You don't know what an IDIQ is, or a GWAC, or a BPA, or an OTA, or WAWF, or IPP. You don't know what any of that stuff is, and it just becomes overwhelming. Well, why would you get into contracting now? Well, spending obviously continues to grow. In 2014, the government spent about $400 billion, or 4 trillion. 400 billion is $4 trillion. They spent about that much, 403 actually. And last year, it was $760 billion was spent with contractors like you and I. $760 billion. That's a 53% increase in the last 10 years. So the government is spending more and more money. However, the weird thing is the number of small businesses is falling. Remember, Uncle Sam does need you. They have to have businesses, especially small businesses, or they cannot function. In 2012, about 120,000 small businesses won contracts with the federal government. 10 years later, only 71,000 companies. So spending went up by 53%, but the number of companies winning went down by 40%. Well, why is it going down, Guy? Because it's getting more and more complex. The government loves to justify why they exist, and so they keep writing more and more rules and make it more and more convoluted. And the challenge is they keep saying, we want small businesses to win contracts, but they keep making it harder. And small businesses really are not getting their fair share. According to the SBA, 99.7% of all businesses in the United States are small businesses. But last year we only got about 140 billion out of the 700. So about 20% was awarded to small businesses. Minorities, it's even worse. 35% of the population today is are minorities, yet minority-owned businesses only got about 37 billion, or 5.4%, was awarded to what are called 8A, or minority-owned businesses. Just a tiny sliver. And women-owned. 41% of the businesses in the United States today, according to Business Week, are women-owned businesses. There's over 30,000 of them registered in SAM, but last year they only got about $32 billion, 4.6. Now this is weird. Congress tells every agency you are required to give 5% of your contracting dollars to small women-owned businesses, or you have to let us know, you have to justify your job. And if contracting officers don't hit that goal, it can limit their upward mobility. And they're still missing that goal. Well, why, Guy? Let's talk about that. Small businesses, especially the small women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, just aren't asking for the contracting dollars. Or you're thinking, I'll ask. Well, the challenge is you have to know how to ask. So why aren't companies asking for the dollars? Well, imagine if you knew there was a big pile of money. You could see it there, this massive pile of money. And all you had to do was to get through this maze. So you get to the beginning of the maze and you start down, and first thing you have to do is figure out where to find the right opportunity. So you figure out where that is, you find a few opportunities, and then one of them says, this is an IDIQ. And you go, oh, I don't know what an IDIQ is. I have to pause and go study. Then you get that down, you figure that out. Then it says you must have 3 past performances with the federal government. Oh, I don't have any past performance with the federal government. You get stuck again. You figure out how to overcome that hurdle. Unfortunately, this maze is filled with about 300,000 companies who registered in SAM, got somewhere in this maze, and just never made it to that pile of money. Because what happens is they get partway there, and then they get frustrated, and they have to go back to their commercial business and keep running that because that's where the cash flow is. And finally, they just say, this is too hard. I give up. That's where GCA comes in. Even with a coach like us, your path won't be perfectly straight. You will have some hiccups. You may decide that Homeland Security is a perfect agency for you. So you go down, you're working on a project through Homeland Security, and you realize, I misunderstood something there. I think I'm going to go to CDC. They're better for me. What we can say is we've helped 14,000 businesses over the last 15 years, and our companies have won over $2 billion in government contracts. We know how to get you to that pile of money. Even if it's not perfectly straight, we absolutely know that if you follow our system, you will get to the pile of money. And that's what we can do for you. One of my clients came back and sat in. Sometimes our past clients will come back and sit in on some of our presentations. And he said, you shouldn't use a girl with GCA. You should use Yoda. Because you were like, do or do not. There is no try. He's like, you were my Yoda guy. You guys helped me get to where I wanted to go. And I said, yeah, but that would be copyright infringements. I'm sure Disney would probably slap a lawsuit on us if I used Yoda. But that's really what we do, is we help you get to where you want to go because we've been there so many times. So how do we help? Well, the first one is we educate. As I mentioned earlier, there's about 22,000 associations in the United States. and every association educates their people. They have training on marketing in your industry. They have training on regulations in your industry. Every association has some sort of educational component to help their members be more successful. Second thing we do is we facilitate. We make it easier. We have dozens and hundreds of templates and links and tools and things that will make it easier, as well as teaching you how to build the right types of relationships within the government space. And the last thing is we advocate. And this happens behind the scenes a lot of time. It's not something that you necessarily see, but we have conversations. We give input to contracting officers and to entities that we have relationships with, being a large government contracting association. In fact, we're the only association really of government contractors in the country. So we do have some things we can do behind the scenes, but also, for example, Oak Ridge National Laboratories, which is a part of the Department of Energy, just reached out to us recently and said, hey, we need some more small businesses. Can we do a lunch and learn with you? And we do a lunch and learn with them about once a year. We also work with the Air Force, with several other agencies who want to introduce their programs to small businesses. So we can do things in the background that you don't necessarily even see happening until an event occurs. And that's what all associations do. Associations do lobbying, doctors associations and construction associations. They all do some sort of lobbying or communications with government entities to help their members be more successful. So what are some of the strategies that you can use? Well, one of the biggest ones is what's called set-asides and certifications. The government knows that they cannot exist without small businesses. And so they have several small business programs. These are all goals that Congress actually requires government agencies to hit these goals. And if they don't hit them, they have to have a very good explanation why they missed it. And as I mentioned earlier, if contracting officers miss these goals, it can limit their upward mobility because they're just not doing their job. So 8A, which is dubbed the minority business owned certification, although about 5% are Caucasian women-owned businesses. 95% of all 8A companies are minority-owned businesses. The government agencies are required by Congress to give 5% of their contracting dollars to small business, 5% to service disabled businesses, 3% to women-owned businesses and economically disadvantaged women-owned businesses, and 3% to HUBZone, which tend to be economically depressed areas of cities. When the government wants to pump money into a city, instead of just throwing money directly at it, sometimes they'll award contracts to businesses that are operating in those areas. For those of you who are just joining, thank you for joining us. I know some of you joined a few minutes late. If you would like to put your, yes, we can help you with SAM. Absolutely, Antonio. It's a relatively straightforward process, and we absolutely can help you with that. Great question. If you've gotten here a little bit later, you want to make sure you get the recording so you get the whole thing. Please either put your email in the chat, or if you'd like to, you can email at info@govcontractors.org, and Miss Via will be sending out the recording. She also has some gifts for you. So thank you for joining us, for those of you who were not able to be here at the top of the hour. Now, other certifications that have value but are not necessarily mandated by Congress are veteran-owned small businesses. The DoD likes to work with veteran businesses. The VA has a program called Vets First. Let's see, SDVO joint ventures require 25 million or more without going to large. Actually, that's an interesting statement. I'm not sure who LinkedIn user is. That every industry has a different number. So 25 million is a, hey, Effie, what's up, girlfriend? Every industry is a slightly different number. For example, I do training for the government, and I've trained several government agencies. In my industry, my NAICS code 611430. If I do less than 15 million a year for 3 years, I'm still a small business. So I could do 17 million one year, but if I did 14 million before and then next year I slow down and I do 11, if the average isn't 15 million for 3 years, if I don't do 45 million in 3 years, I'm still considered a small business. So that 25 million is for some industries. IT is 37.5 million. So every industry is slightly different, as well as the certifications. So that's a brilliant point. Thank you for sharing. HUD is mostly construction, janitorial. If you do any work for the Department of Housing and Urban Development and you hire employees that are getting government assisted housing, then they make it easier for you to win contracts because they want to support the people that are in government assisted housing. The current administration, when they took office in 2021, really strengthened the small disadvantaged business set asides. And so there's a lot of, medical, brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, medical has its own designation, and 25 million would be a designation for that group, medical supplies. And then historically Black colleges and universities, minority institutes. Now, this is self-imposed. The DoD isn't required to do this, but they spend at least 5% of their research dollars with HBCUs and minority institutes. Then states will also have their own set-asides. So state of Georgia and several states have a DBE. Some have minority business enterprise, women business enterprise. Texas has its own hub, which is similar to the hub zone for the federal, but it's specifically to help revitalize Texas cities. Virginia has small women and minority businesses. North Carolina has statewide unified certification programs. So every state has some sort of program to help minorities, women, veteran businesses, things like that. Counties also have their own. Fulton County there in Georgia has minority and female business enterprise. Cook County up in the Illinois area has minority business enterprise, women business enterprise, and veteran business. LA County actually has down in Southern California has CBE, community business enterprise. They really try to support the businesses in LA County before they go outside. Then Atlanta has all of their own certifications. And large businesses have all of their own certifications. Large businesses have diversity programs. In fact, if a large company wins a contract with the federal government, they're required to give some of those dollars to small business. And we'll talk about those percentages in a little while. So these are all the ways that you can start thinking about, how do I choose the right certification? Because you can't be a kid in a candy store and spend so much time trying to get certifications that you don't spend time finding contracts. So it's a balance. And that's one of the biggest things we help you do, is balance that time. So certifications are designed to shorten your path to, we call it the fastest path to cash. Some of the contracts that are put out by agencies say total small business. That means any company that meets the small business requirements, as we were just saying, in my industry's 15 million, medical supplies, 25 million, IT's 37.5 million. Contracts are set aside that say total small business, and only small businesses. Lockheed and Boeing and IBM and Dell, all those companies can't bid on them. Only small businesses can. But then they also have something called sole source contracts. And sole source contracts are kind of the holy grail of government contracting. You don't have to write a proposal, spend hours and hours and hours working on all of that. You don't have to find the opportunity. These are almost always through relationships. Through either you've done a good job for somebody and they hire you again, but they don't make you go through the procurement process this time. They may just make it really fast and simple. Or you did a good job for one contracting officer and another contracting officer reaches out and says, hey, do you have somebody that's good at janitorial, good at construction, good at IT, logistics, whatever it is? In 2023, over $12 billion were awarded to 8A companies, and they didn't even have to write a proposal. They didn't have to find the opportunity. Somebody reached out to them and said, hey, I'm an agency and I would like to work with you. So understanding these strategies is absolutely critical. So how do you develop a strategy? Well, just like everything else in your life, you want to do step-by-step process. Losing weight is pretty straightforward. You eat less, you exercise more, you get more sleep, you take care of yourself. And it's similar in the government space. The process is P plus P plus P plus P equals P. There's going to be a quiz at the end, so hopefully you can memorize this. Okay, I lied. There's no quiz. But you should be able to memorize this. P plus P plus P plus P equals P. Well, the first P is preparation. And this is the number one area where we see companies neglect really understand the government marketing process. We had a company come to us a couple of months ago, and he booked a time on my calendar and said, we have submitted 7 proposals now, and we haven't won any of them. Would you review our next proposal before we submit it? And we said, absolutely. Our proposal writing team has written over 3,000 proposals. We'll definitely take a look at it. But let me ask you a few questions. Can I take a look at your website? Can I take a look at your capability statement? Can I look at your marketing materials that you've been sending to contracting officers? Well, we don't do any of that. We just want to bid on contracts. Well, it doesn't work like that. People buy from people they know, like, and trust. If they go to your website and there's no government tab, if they try to find your capability statement and you don't have one, they're in their mind, they're going, these guys are risky. Government contracting officers are risk averse. Why would they hire somebody that might fail? It's not their money. So maybe you put in a bid for $1 million and somebody else puts in a bid for $1.1 million or $1.2 million, but that other company looks solid. They're going to spend the $1.2 million because it's not their money, it's ours. And they're afraid to hire you if you don't look like you're a very solid company. And so a lot of companies that we work with say, I've already registered. I've been trying to put in contract or proposals, but I'm just not getting anything. Why am I struggling? That's because you don't look like a solid company in the government contracting officer's eyes. Next one is promotion. So once you have a good solid base, you understand how to make yourself look great, and you understand all the labor laws. Labor laws are different. You have to pay your employees different on government sites. There's several things that you have to do to make sure. So now you start promoting yourself. You make yourself look very attractive to the government agencies. Then where do you find opportunities to write proposals on? And then how do you write proposals that are attractive? So that's another whole section that we help you with. And then how do you perform? Well, come on, guy. I know how to do my business. I've been in business for 6 months, a year, 12 years, 15 years. I know how to do whatever it is that I do. Why do I need help with performance? Because compliance issues are different, and communication is different, and billing is different, and everything is different in the government space. So not only do you have to do your job, but you have to do it in a way that the contracting officer wants to give you the next contract. And we have a lot of people come to us and say, I want a contract. I thought it went pretty well, but I've never got another one. Well, maybe it didn't go really well. Maybe you didn't stay compliant. Maybe you didn't communicate properly. Maybe you didn't bill in a way that they appreciated. Maybe you didn't get them their closeout checklist material quickly enough. So there's a lot of things that can bite you in the behind. And when you do those first 4 P's, that's where the profit comes in. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at a tool that kind of sets us apart from anybody else in the country or the world, literally. This is a tool that was started back in 2014. Remember, GCA became an association in 2010, almost 15 years ago now, 14 years and something ago. GCA became an association. And we were doing classes. Our members were loving it. We were growing. And people said, we love what you're teaching, but we wish we had a tool that was help us stay more structured. And this is really what sold me when I met with Abe back in 2017 to decide if I wanted to take this class. Coming from a construction and electrical background, I understood blueprints. I knew that if I was going to wire a new home or if I was going to build something, that I had to have blueprints that told me the size of everything, where the outlet boxes were, where the switches were, where the lights were. I needed to have a step-by-step process. Now, I already had to know how to do electrical, but I needed the process to show me what order I was supposed to do it in. And that's what this does for you. Well, it doesn't look very impressive, guy. It's got like 5 or 6 pretty colored rows. It's not all that impressive. Well, if we look at the bottom row here, though, we'll see that it actually has 966 rows. Every one of these rows is one of those 4 P's that we talked about. So the first one is the preparation. So how do you prepare your business? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to assess where you are today. So we start on row 4 here and we end on row 169. There's 164 rows just to prepare your business. Where am I at today? Do I have the right accounting system? Do I have the right? Do I understand the right labor laws? Do I understand how I have to pay my people differently if I'm working in the government space and if I'm working in the commercial segment? Things like that. So first you have assessment, then you have strategy. Think of this almost as a GPS. If you use your phone and you use a GPS to get somewhere, the first thing that GPS has to know is where you are. Every once in a while, my iPhone, I'll ask it for directions somewhere, and it will say, I don't know where we are. And then a few seconds later, it figures it out. Oh, that's what the assessment is. Where am I today? Strategy is where do we want to go? And we start here on row 170, and we end up on row 244. So we have 75 rows on strategy. What is your short term? How are you going to get into the contract process quickly? And then how are you going to get it long term? So short term, long term. What money strategies? In a commercial market, you can require 25% down or 50% down to start a project. The government doesn't do that. So you may have to have some funds up front to carry the project for a few months. Where are you going to get that money? Understanding those strategies is different. And then education, government contracting 101. You know, in college, you might have taken psychology 101 or history or math or whatever it was, 101. What are the basics of government contracting? And then how do I speak the language? Imagine going to Japan, not knowing how to speak Japanese and trying to build a language there. It would be difficult. Same thing in the government space. That's where a lot of people struggle, is they don't understand the language of government contracting. And the last part of preparation is making sure you're registered in the right place. So am I registered in SAM? Have I registered as a veteran-owned business, a woman-owned business, minority-owned business? Have I registered with my state, my county? Which ones of those should I do? And so it just goes step by step. We won't go through all of them in the interest of time, but each one of them breaks down. There's 12 total steps in those the 4 P's. So there's 4 main processes and then 12 sub-steps that we take you through. Each one is bite-sized, so it's easy to understand. And it's full of templates, tools, websites, training videos. This is a tool that is absolutely amazing. And in 2014, Abe and his team, I can't say we because I didn't join the team till 17. In 2014, when Abe kept getting the question, we wish we had more structure. It took them almost 2 years to create this. They started in 14, they finished in 16. And when it first launched, it had 634 rows. As you saw a second ago, it now has 966 rows. So in the last 7 years, we've added another 350 rows or 330 rows of new information. Some of it's new programs or policies that the government has rolled out. Some of it is stuff that we learned that we didn't know. There is no human being on the planet that knows everything about government contracting. So we constantly are taking classes. I take at least 2 classes a month on government contracting from other agencies, from big, huge government contractors. I'll sit in on their trainings. We constantly are learning to bring more information to you. So this is a tool that is absolutely invaluable in going step by step through what you need to do to win government contracts. So that is the Gov Fast Track software. So I've been talking now for about 45, 50 minutes. I'd like to open it up for questions. If anybody has anything, you can put it in the chat box and I will address it. Miss Via, have you seen any questions that I might have missed earlier? Did anybody ask anything that I didn't address yet?
Yes, there is a question way back. LinkedIn user, how do you get the CPARs needed to show viability?
Okay, excellent. So CPARs is almost like your credit report or your work history, your resume for the government space. And the number one, or one of the number one challenges that companies have, is a lot of contracts require past performance in the government space. Well, if you've never done government work, how do you get past performance in the government space? It's almost like when we were kids and we tried to get that first job. We were 16, 17 years old. And if we went to a nicer place and tried to get a job, they said, well, we only hire people with experience. Well, how do I get experience? So we had to take a job at McDonald's or, fast food places or retail, something like that. In the government space, there's multiple strategies to do that. The 3 that we teach most aggressively, and there's other ones that we also help you with, are subcontracting, which is huge. And we're going to talk about the percentages required. Large companies are required to give small businesses a certain percentage of their contracts when they win contracts. So as a small business, most people think that I'm going to register in SAM and my first contract is going to be a prime contract with a government agency. And the reality is that rarely happens. About 10% of the time, people win a contract as a prime contract. The other 90% of the time, and these are soft numbers, it could be 88 or 92, but around only 10% of companies, their first contract is a prime contract. The majority of companies, it's a subcontract or a teaming contract or a joint venture contract. So let's say that you offer logistics or medical supplies or training services, and you would like to do training in the government space. So we'll use logistics. So let's say you're a logistics company. You move house goods from one place to another. You're a small mom and pop company, and you would like to move things for the government. Well, United Van Lines might have a multi-million-dollar contract with the government to move military personnel's housing, household effects. So, but because they're a large company, they're required to sub out small businesses to help them. So the majority of the time when a small business starts in the government space, they get a subcontract from a large company, or they find another small business that's in a similar industry with them, and they do maybe a teaming agreement. So for example, let's say that you do IT services and maybe you're in cybersecurity. And so you start finding teaming partners, and we teach you the whole process of how to find the right teaming partners, where to find them, how to find out what they do. And so you partner with somebody, you see a contract that wants cybersecurity and data analytics. Well, you don't do data analytics, you do cybersecurity. So you find another small business who already has past performance in the government space. You partner with them. They do the data analytics, you do the cybersecurity, and you both get more past performance. So that's the number one strategy, is either subbing to a large business, a large prime, working with another small business, or even something called joint ventures, which is a little bit more in depth for a conversation like this. But you start working with companies who are already winning contracts, you use their past performance, and the government understands that everybody on the contract isn't going to have past performance, because they constantly are looking to grow the number of small businesses they work with. So it is very acceptable for one of the teaming partners to have solid past performance and the other teaming partner to be new to the government space. In fact, about 70% of all government contracts are delivered by more than one contractor. So that is very, very normal. So those are the main strategies. There's other ones that we teach: micro purchases, SAPs, reverse auctions. There's a lot of strategies, but those are some of the main strategies that we use. I hope that answered your question.
There's
okay.
There's another question. Can sole source be contested by another company that offers the same services?
Absolutely. Now, you want to be really careful contesting something, though, for a few reasons. So whenever the government is going to give a sole source contract, they have to list in SAM intent to sole source. And there's two main reasons that they have intent to sole source. One, and obviously doesn't apply in this case, one is they're the only company that can do it. So let's say that Lockheed invents a new switch or upgrades a switch for the F-18s. And they designed it, they created it, they're the only company in the world that makes it. So the contracting officer is going to sole source that to Lockheed, because nobody else is allowed to make that switch. It is a custom designed, patented product that Lockheed makes. In that case, there's obviously no contest, because nobody else can do it. However, if they say intent to sole source, and it's because we talked about relationships earlier, and they really want to, they need to up their women-owned business set-asides or whatever it is, they got a referral, you absolutely can contest it. And you might win. And if you do win the, it's called a protest, actually, not a contest, a protest. You can protest it. If you win the protest, then what happens is that becomes an open RFP. Now they put it out and anybody can bid on it. The chance of you winning that is zero, because you just caused the contracting officer a world of heartache. And there's a decent chance they're going to choose the company that they were going to sole source to anyway. Even if they don't, even if they choose somebody else, it's not going to be you. So protesting sole sources is a terrible strategy. The other thing is it's expensive, because there's legal documentation. It's not just I'm protesting. You have to get an attorney to write a brief. It's not, thousands and thousands of dollars to get the attorney to write the brief. Then they send it in. Then it may have to be arbitrated. So the attorney, you may drop $5,000 or $10,000 to protest the sole source, and you don't win the contract anyway, because it just becomes an open RFP and they choose somebody else. They're not going to choose you. There is almost zero chance. So terrible strategy, legally correct, legally allowed, terrible, terrible strategy. Great question, though. Thank you. Any other questions?
Is
at
there
GCA.
a fee to schedule a time to meet with you following the podcast?
Absolutely not. We are an association. We love to help people. You can meet with me, give you a half hour. We'll look at your business, look at what you're doing. We'll share some strategies with you. And then obviously I'm going to share some of the resources we have. I'll talk to you about that software package that I just showed you, if that's something that you would like to purchase. But no, there is no fee to meet with us. And I absolutely guarantee you will get value out of a one-on-one, because I'll be able to talk to you directly about your industry, your business, and you'll get value out of it, even if you decide not to take any of our services. But obviously, I will let you know some of the products and services we have available during that time. Great question. Thank you so much. So just let me know if I miss anything else, Miss Via. We're gonna move on in the interest of time. So some of the people that we've helped, Tasha was one of our very earliest multi-million-dollar winners. Like Abe, she was living in Atlanta and she was doing real estate investing. And she pretty much lost everything when the housing bubble burst. And she was talking with Abe. They had known each other peripherally, being in the real estate investing business, and asked him what he was doing. He said he was helping businesses win government contracts. And so she was one of the early clients that GCA had, and started helping her get her certifications, her woman-owned certification. One of the first things that Abe did was had her change the name of her company. She was Visionary Construction. He said, well, that kind of limits you, because the government, if they like you, they want to buy a lot of things from you. But if your name of your company's construction, they won't think to buy anything else from you. So one of the first things they did is change the name to Visionary Services, started getting her some certifications. And her first contract was out at Fort Mac there in Georgia. It was about a $20,000 building repair. If I remember right, a vehicle ran into a building and they needed a little bit of repair work done. So her construction team went out and did that. She kept getting certifications. She got her minority-owned business 8A certification, and her SBA boss, business opportunity specialist, reached out to her and said, hey, Atlanta Hartsfield needs some security doors and security cameras installed at the airport. And so Tasha came to Abe and said, my guys can do the security doors. We've been doing construction a long time, but we don't know anything about security cameras. And Abe said, remember, OPE, other people's efforts. You want to earn money off of other people's efforts. He said, go find a local camera company, security camera company, hire them, get a price from them, add that into your contract, mark it up a little bit for managing it, and then submit that. She won that contract. And because she had done security work, she added all the securities NAICS codes to her SAM registration, to her capability statement, her website. She added the securities NAICS code, and her SBA boss reached out and said, hey, there's a Coast Guard base down in Miami, and they are going to be awarding a security guard contract to an 8A business, a minority-owned business. And so Tasha comes to Abe and says, I don't know anything about security guards, but my SBA boss said maybe I should bid on it. So the first step was to find out who has the contract currently. Somebody is currently providing security guards. So we found out that a large business out of Houston had the contract for 2 cycles. They had it for 5 years. They did well. They had it for 4 more years, and it was coming up for rebid, because they start rebidding it about a year before the contract renews. And the Coast Guard had been missing their 8A goal. So they said, this year, we want to make this goal set aside for a small minority-owned business. Well, the company in Texas was not minority-owned and not a small business, so they couldn't qualify to bid on the contract. So they were going to lose the contract completely. So Tasha reached out to them and said, would you guys like to partner on this? I'll bid it as a prime, as a minority-owned business. I'll do all of the HR, all the admin, the payroll, the benefits packages. I'll take care of all of that if you'll do the hiring, training, and scheduling of the security guards. So she got a multi-million-dollar contract without having to understand the industry at all. She already had an HR team, and she brought in another person, a full-time HR person, to help out with the process. Remember, other people's efforts. You don't have to. The money's in the getting, not the doing. For those of you who are taking notes, write that down. The money's in the getting, not the doing. You don't have to do all the work. You have to do some of it. You can't just, it's illegal for you to win a contract and hand it to somebody else. That's called pass-through contracting or middleman contracting, and that's illegal. It's a violation of the FAR. But you don't have to do all the work. but you have to do some of the work, and you can let other people do a lot of the work and still make very, very good income without having to understand every industry you're part of. Jorge was our fastest person to ever win a multi-million-dollar contract. He's a service-disabled vet. He was in the Army. He was in the medical corps in the Army, and he actually joined GCA as a member, because we have a membership that you'll learn about here in a few minutes. And his first question is, if I want to sell products to the government, what's the first thing I should do? Well, for any of you in product sales, the first thing is you have to have a solid supply chain, because if they're going to buy products from you, they want to make sure that you have somebody that can supply them to you. So in this case, he wanted to sell hospital beds and wheelchairs and x-ray machines and gloves and needles and disposable wipes and everything that hospitals need. So we told him, work on your supply chain. So in 2001, he spent a serious amount of time working on getting partners to have everything that the hospital might need. And then in 22, he took a class that I'm going to tell you about here in a minute. It's the same class I took back in 2017 called the Certified Capture Manager Program. He was in the February cohort, and he was what was called the MIP, Most Inspirational Person. We have a lot of fun in class. It's a serious class, and some of the material can be a little bit dry, so we try to laugh. We try to have a good time. And we have competitions with each other, highest score, most inspirational, and the fellow students voted Jorge as the most inspirational person in class. He was always helpful. He would, if he found out about events or if he found about information, he would share it with the rest of the class. And so he was the MIP. As I said, he had a pretty new business, but his supply chain was already pretty solid. He started the class in February of 22. He graduated in May of 22. In June of 22, he asked Abe to help him. He reached out and said, hey, I need help on this contract. So we helped him bid on a contract that was a $50 million contract. And you're going, come on, wait a minute, guy. How can a startup company bid on a $50 million contract? Well, that's where learning to understand government contracting and the verbiage really matters. So first place, it was a $50 million contract. It was a 5-year contract. So that's about $10 million a year. Well, that's still a lot for one company, guy. It's also an IDIQ, which means indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. We know that we're going to need some of it, but we're not sure when, and we're not sure how much. IDIQs are almost always awarded to multiple companies. In this case, it was 3 other companies besides Jorge. So it was a total of 4 companies doing about $10 million a year. So last time I talked to Jorge, it's been a few months now, but his billing was up to almost $200,000 a month. So he's up to about that $2.5 million a year, which makes sense because it's $10 million a year and there's 4 companies. So he's getting about 25% of the money for the hospital group that he is supporting. So from a startup company to a year later doing $200,000 a month in billing, it's very, very doable. He's the fastest one to ever do it. And recently, he was asked to bid on another $50 million IDIQ. So hopefully that will come along and work out for him, because he's got a bigger team now. He's got more stability, better relationships. He's getting better pricing with his suppliers because he's moving more volume. So he's got a decent chance of getting that second $50 million IDIQ. Harold is a person who has the largest contract of any of our clients so far. He was in our September of 2022 CCM class. He was actually the valedictorian. He had the highest score of anybody throughout the whole class. You do homework each week. You have certain assignments that you do. You get bonus points for doing certain things. And Harold was the valedictorian of the class. As soon as he finished, he said, I've learned so much, Abe, but I'm going to need more help. I really want to do this rapidly. So he joined our coaching program after the Certified Capture Manager class. Now, he was a pretty big company. He was already doing, I think, like 11 or 15 million or something. He was not a startup company. He was but in the government space, that's still a small company, because 37.5 million is a classification for small businesses for IT. So he was doing a decent amount of work already, and he wanted to grow rapidly. In August of 23, he got an award. It's a 10-year contract, and each year is worth up to 86 million. And again, that sounds like a massive number. So here's how this contract played out. It's actually a state of Illinois contract. 2 years ago in 21, the state of Illinois said it's silly for every city and every county, as well as the state, to keep getting IT companies to do different work. The state will take the responsibility. We're going to reach out to every municipality in the state of Illinois, and we're going to ask them, what is everything you could possibly need from an IT standpoint in 1 year? And every county and every city that wanted to participate sent a wish list to the state. The state compiled that and put it out as an RFP. So Harold got a teaming partner, a couple of subcontractors, because again, nobody does everything in the IT space. Some of it was hardware, some of it was cybersecurity, some of it was networking, some of it was programming. So he worked with 3 other companies, and they put in a bid, and they said, if everybody in the state bought everything they possibly could want, it would be $86 million a year. And he won the contract. And it was actually a minority set aside. He's originally from India. He's Indian American, not Native American, but from India. He's Indian American. And so he won it. He was the prime because it was set aside for minority owned businesses. And they told him in the first year it would probably be about 20% of that. And it was about $16 million in year 1. They told him within the first couple years, it will be up to about a third, about probably about 30-35%. So he's expecting 24-25 because it was awarded in the middle of the year. He's expecting 24-25 to probably be about $25 million. Not bad for a company who's doing 11 or 12 million. He's over doubled his business in just one contract. He's obviously brought on more team members, and it's going very, very smoothly for him. So again, this is our biggest. So don't think, oh, wow, guy has a couple of companies that got $50 million contracts and $100 million contracts, and everybody doesn't do this. But the reality is that when you follow our system, we can help you win contracts. That's not even a question. So how do you get started with us? Well, first thing is just become a member. Start sitting in our trainings. We do 3 to 4 trainings every week. You can sit in all of those when you're a member. Start working on your strategy. Get whatever certifications you should have. If you're a minority owned, get your 8A. If you're a small disadvantaged business, or you're a woman-owned business or service-disabled veteran, start working on those. We highly encourage you to get the Certified Capture Manager certification. When you have letters after your name, you tend to make more money. A bookkeeper makes X amount of money. A CPA makes more. An RN or an NP makes a certain amount of money. An MD, medical doctor, makes more money. So start getting certifications that show large primes, other businesses, government agencies that you're certified and you know what you're talking about. And then start writing your proposals. If you like to write proposals, if you're a good technical writer, then we'll show you how to do it. We have classes on it. We have videos on it. We have templates for it. We'll help you. If you don't want to do it, we'll do it for you. Okay. I say we have a proposal writing team that's written over 3,000 proposals now. And you can start getting connected with experts. We'll make introductions for you. We'll connect you with other people in our network, and you can start getting that money. So how much is a contract worth? Well, for Tasha, it was 3.1 million. For Jorge, it'll be worth about 10 to 15 million over the next 5 years, and possibly double that if he gets that new contract he's bidding on. And for Harold, it's going to be worth $200 or $300 million over the next 10 years. So the money is available if you know how to ask for it. Now, membership's only $5.99. So what's that? $50 a month. If you give up a Starbucks a day or a Starbucks every couple of days, you can pay for that. I mean, it's a joke really to invest in your business, $599, and it gives you access to a lot of cool things. So Miss Via has put in the chat box the link if you would like to join GCA and start getting access to our templates and our trainings and different things like that. Some of the benefits, you'll get a resource page. When you become a member, there's a resource page with all kinds of templates, information, how to do things. You can sit in an advanced training. Every year we do multiple advanced trainings. When AI came out a year and a half ago or so, how do you use AI for government contracting? Every year during between Q3, early Q4, how do you take advantage of Q4 dollars? Because the government spends more in the last quarter of the year than all the rest of the year. So how do you take advantage of that? So we do advanced trainings throughout the year on different topics. We do networking events. We did a networking event with the Atlanta Black Chambers not too long ago for veteran-owned businesses. So they brought all of their veteran-owned businesses. We bought our veteran-owned businesses, and we taught them how to get their VOSB and SDVOSB. So we do networking events with different agencies, different groups, different organizations. You can sit in on our capture management trainings that we have. We teach students on that are actually going through a program. You'll get a strategic assessment. That 20-point assessment that Ms. V is sending you for being with us today. You'll also get a coach to go through that and look. One of the things it says, are you registered to SAM properly? A coach will look at that. Are you registered in SDBS properly? A coach will look at that for you. So it's much deeper where you get a second set of eyes for yourself. You're going to get a bid matching platform, which I'm going to show you here in a minute, which is very, very cool. And again, for $600 a year, $50 a month, it's almost a joke not to be part of GCA if you have any desire whatsoever to become a government contractor. So that bid matching platform that we're talking about is called GovGenie. It's actually a sister company to GCA. It's not owned by GCA. It's its own standalone sister company. And it is $99 a month. So if you join GovGenie, it's $100 a month, or about $1,200 a year. But if you join GCA, it's $600 a year, and you get your first year absolutely free over at GovGenie. So let's take a look at what GovGenie looks like. In a lot of respects, it looks like LinkedIn. It is a social platform, so it does have some social component. Sometimes companies will post information on here about they're looking for a teaming partner, or they'll see some information that's interesting. We post trainings on here. So there's a lot of different things that are on here that are available to you. But also, and more importantly, you can find opportunities right here. So for example, my NAICS code for doing training in the government space, if I was deciding I wanted to get another contract in training, 611430 is my NAICS code. I select that, click apply, and then this calls up contracts that are available in my space. And as you can see, there's 10 per page, and there's 221 pages. So there's 2,200 training contracts available. Now I could use my PSC code U008 and narrow it down. There's different ways you can do this depending on how you what you're wanting to look for. But if I go right through these, a lot of these I couldn't do. Firefighter certification I couldn't do. Virtual project management, I could do that. I could absolutely do that. I've taught project management classes for years now, so I could, let's say I wanted to do that one. So I would click on this. It tells me a little bit more about it. If I click on here, it tells me what they're looking for. This one happens to be PSC code U009. It tells me all of the different rules. I must qualify as a small business. So it requires 3 project management professional training classes to be held between June 1. Yeah, I could easily do this project. So let's say I decided, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and bid on this. What I would do is I would add this to my bid board. Okay, it's going to tell me who the contracting officer is, what their phone number is, how I can get a hold of them if I want to. I click add, and now it puts it in my bid board. And any of you who have used CRM similar to Pipedrive or anything like that, it's a similar type of layout. So now it's in my evaluating section. So I come over here and I decide, I read the rest of the way through it. I get some more information and I go, okay, yeah, this is something that I really do want to bid on. Then what I can do is now maybe it's an RFI, which says request for information. In a case like that, what that means is they'll say something like, in Q4, we're going to be looking for somebody to do this, and we're just looking to see if anybody is interested. So they'll put something like that out, source of solder RFI. In that case, I would put it on my watch list, and if it got updated, then I would know, oh, now they're actually putting it out as an RFI, okay, or as an RFP. In this case, I've decided I do want to bid it. I'm going to put it over here in scoping. Now I can go through here, and it's going to pop up, and it's going to say, can we meet the proposal date? Do I have at least 3 weeks? Yes, this one was due in about 3 weeks. Do I have the required past performance? Yes, I've done a lot of training for the government. Am I known by the client? In this case, no. I don't know anybody over at the USD or at the Department of Forestry. Do I have the technical ability? Absolutely. I've been a trainer for over 20 years now. Do I have proof of qualified staff? Absolutely. I've got no problem. So you just go right through here, and it will help you decide. Once you answer all of these questions, it will help you decide if you should bid on it. If you're at 65, 70%, you should bid on it. if this was my total score, 36%, I probably wouldn't want to bid on it. So let's say, yeah, I've gone through the whole thing. It looks good. Now I'm going to submit that. And now I decide I'm going to go ahead and write a proposal on it. I drag it over here to drafting. But let's say that I needed a teaming partner. What I can do with this now is this becomes a tool where I can invite other people. And then what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to share documents. So I don't need a Dropbox or a Google Drive or something like that. All of the documents will be here. You can assign work. So if I have a teaming partner and one of my teaming partners has to do something, that I can assign it right here. They'll get an email that says, Guy has requested that you get your pricing to him by May 10th or May 5th or whatever it is. So it's an incredibly powerful tool to help you find opportunities under opportunities, to track your opportunities, and to coordinate them. Well, let's say I don't know where to get a teaming partner though, Guy. I need somebody. If you come over here and you click on directory, and now these are virtual, so I would be able to do all these myself. But let's say that they were live and they were in different locations. Then what I might do is I might put a location in here and put state. Maybe one of them is up in Washington State. Okay, well, I live in Louisiana down near New Orleans. I may not necessarily want to go to Washington State. It might make sense for me to find somebody up in Washington State that could do this with me. So I can now start looking for, well, there's nobody in that NAICS code in Washington State. So, so I might find somebody in Oregon or somebody in Idaho that could help out with that. So you can look in all of these different tools, and it will help you find people that can help you with that project. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use this to help you. And remember, this is absolutely free when you're a member of GCA. So these are ways that you could find somebody to work with you in that case. The last program that we'll talk about, and thank you, Ms. Via, put the link. You can go to GovGenie. You'll watch a little bit of video about it. There's a demonstration there. So if you'd like to get more information on the bid matching platform, you're absolutely invited to do that. The Capture Management Program is our premier class for helping somebody really that is serious about winning government contracts. It's a class that I took back in 2017. And we really have a few types of people in there. We have capture managers, as we mentioned before. These are currently sales reps in the government space already. Then we have small business owners who want to win contracts, or maybe they've started down the journey, but they feel they need some more help. And sometimes salespeople join us. They're doing sales in IT, construction, logistics, janitorial. And they say, I've heard there's a lot of money in the government space for sales reps. And that's absolutely true. So sometimes we have sales reps join us who are not in the government space yet, but they would like to get a job in the government space. So the Capture Management Program does help you earn the designation of CCM. If any of you have ever heard of Project Management Professional, which is overseen by PMI, Project Management Institute, our system is very similar. A lot of the structure is similar. The general body of knowledge is similar. I'm not going to say that we jacked their system, but we did research to see how they built their organization. And PMI is about 50 years old. CMI, Capture Management Institute, is about 5 years old. So we've got some learning to do. It's a 15-week program. You have about a week of pre-work. You have 12 actual weeks of class, and you have some post-work that we have you do. And it really does give you the knowledge, the information, and the tools to win government contracts. When you graduate, you carry the designation of Certified Capture Manager. So why would you work with us? We are the only company that I know of, and I've researched a lot, that is approved as a college in the government space. Our program is approved by the state of Georgia. All of these colleges have the exact same certification that we carry. It took us about 2 years to get certified as a college in the state of Georgia, and then every year they review our records, they review our success rate, they look at all of our financials to make sure that we're a healthy business, that we're thriving and taking care of our clients. And so all of these companies are certified by the state of Georgia as a college, just like we are. So if you're going to work with anybody, make sure that they have some sort of certification and they're not just saying, yeah, we're really good, but nobody oversees what they're doing there. So what do you get when you take the class, the CCM program? Well, as I said, it's 12 actual weeks of instruction. We have a little bit of pre-work. We have some time to study at the end for a final exam, and then we have a graduation. So we ask you to set aside about 15 hours. It's a total of about 120 hours of curriculum. You do get that Gov Fast Track software, that 960 rows of information. You have a learning management system, which is 15 self-paced modules. And I say self-paced, your coach or instructor actually assigns you modules every week, but you can do them throughout the week whenever you want to. You get access to our Gov Training Vault. It's about 300 hours of past classes. So let's say that maybe you're getting ready to write a proposal and we're in week 6. Well, proposal writing classes are weeks 8 and 9. Well, if you don't want to wait for that because the proposal's coming due, you can watch some of our past classes and see what we teach about that. So you have access to over 300 hours of that. You have a coach that you can reach out to when you need. You have a study partner that you meet with weekly, encourage each other, help each other out. And you have to interview for acceptance. This is actually my CCM class. This is Nyanza, Cynthia, Cheryl, Deb, Gerald, and myself, and Abe was our instructor. We had a very good time. And whenever I go to Atlanta, if I'm there on the weekend, Cynthia and I go to church together. Gerald is still a very good friend. In fact, his daughter is going to be in our class. We have a class coming up next Thursday. We have a class starting, and Gerald's daughter is going to be in the class. He was in my class 7 years ago, and now his daughter's taking the class, and I'm teaching it. So it's kind of a fun full circle. So we are a very family, long-term oriented organization here. You do get a certificate. So if you're an employee of a company, it's nice that you can turn that into HR. It's documented for you. And the program is $10,000, like many college courses. But when you're a member of GCA, it's only $6,000. So remember, membership's only $600. So for $6,600, you get a program that's worth about $10,000. Class does start on May 9th, which is next Thursday. We run our classes in the evening because most of our clients are business owners or working full time, and they'd like to take classes. So it's 6 to 9 or 6 to 8 East Coast time. So if you're on the West Coast, it's 3 to 5, and then everywhere in between. And again, you've got my calendar link. Ms. Via's put it in the chat box a couple of times. You can set a time to meet with me. Now, your time is actually really, really good because the class does start next week. If you would like to get more information, set a time with me. And one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do is sit in on that first class. And you'll see how we teach, what the tools are, what the resources are. Normally, you have to pay to attend any of our classes if you're not a member. But what we're going to be able to do for you is we're going to let you have that first class for free. It'll give you a really good feel for, yes, this is a program that makes sense for me, or no, that's not my learning style, whatever it is. So it's a no-cost investment. So you do want to set up a time to meet with me to make sure you're a good fit, because I don't want to waste your time of sitting through a 2-hour class if we don't think we're a good fit for you, if we can't help you. So set a time on my calendar. I'll get you the link for free. You'll be able to sit in on that, and we're going to have some resources for you that's going to be very, very cool. Last thing I like to do is give a couple of quick strategies and a free gift to say thank you for staying with us till the end. So remember, the government awards around $700 billion a year in government contracts. 77% of that can be bid on by anybody. That's called open competition. 23% is set aside for only small businesses. And we've talked about that a couple of times. 5% for minority owned, 3% for hub zones, so on and so forth. One strategy a lot of people don't understand is when a large company wins a contract over $750,000, they're required by the federal acquisition regulations to give 35% of that to small businesses. And that's the answer for our LinkedIn user that says, how do you start getting that CPARS? Is large companies have to give small businesses contracts, or they lose the right to get future contracts. So understanding those rules, understanding how to communicate with them is a great way to start building getting your CPARS references in place. And the last thing we'll talk about before we give you your final gift is the relationships you'll want to build in the government space. These are end users. They need your product or services, but they can't buy them. This might be a logistics officer. It might that needs products or people moved. It might be a doctor at CDC who needs a new freezer. It might be an office manager who needs to get a new janitorial company. So these are end users that need your products or services, but they can't buy it. Contracting officers can buy it. So they communicate and they said, hey, we need new computers. We need a new freezer. We need new trucks, whatever it is. The contracting officer can buy it. And this is you in the middle. So you want to have a relationship with all these people. And then there's small business advocates because agencies are required to give small businesses 23% of their contracting dollars, they have offices set up to help you learn how to do business with their agencies. So it's important to know how to find and communicate with them. Then you have large primes. Large primes are companies that need small businesses so they can meet that set aside goal of 35%. There's other small businesses you might want to work with. You might want to work with them because you're a women-owned business and you see an opportunity that's set aside for a service-disabled veteran, and you don't have that designation, but it would be a great match for you. You guys do it together. Or like I mentioned earlier, maybe you do cybersecurity, another company does data analytics, so you want to work on it together. Or maybe it's a janitorial project on 10 buildings and you can only clean 3. You might get a couple of partners and each of you can clean 3 or 4 buildings and you guys can do it together. Oops, forgot one. And the last one is your internal team. When do you start hiring salespeople? When do you hire proposal writers? When do you hire a CPA at the right time? We want to make sure you have this information so you can grow steadily without getting yourself in trouble. And the final gift, bottom of the hour, my timing was pretty good today. Sometimes I run over a little bit, but we did well today. Your final gift is every contracting officer we've ever talked to said, I won't even talk to somebody if they don't have a quality capability statement. So we're going to send you this template. It's going to be in PowerPoint format. So if you're a logistics company, put a trucking yard up here. If you're an IT company, put some server racks up here. Put your company logo, your NAICS codes, a little bit about your company. Now, if you've never had any past performance in the government space, put some of the companies you've worked for. If you've done work for, and list your largest companies first. So if you did work for IBM or Home Depot or Coca-Cola, put those. If you've only got smaller companies, then put what you've done. You have to have a starting point somewhere. So this is a great tool that you can use. It's in PowerPoint. Anybody that has PowerPoint can modify it. And it's very easy to adapt, and you'll have a nice quality marketing piece. Oh, hey, Effie. Yeah, Effie and I just used to live right down the road from each other, and then I moved to Louisiana, so now we live 1,700 miles apart. Effie is one of our graduates of our CCM class, so glad she stopped back in and see us sometime. Anybody have any other questions? I am going to stop sharing. That's the end of our presentation. If you feel that you need to drop off, make sure you set up a time to meet with me, and we can get you set up to come to that free class next week. Or if you want to stay and ask any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box and we will get them answered for you. Awesome. Thank you for your email, Mr. Jones. I appreciate, or Miss Jones, not sure. Thank you for your email. Any other final thoughts or questions before we end our presentation today? All right, we'll give it about 30 more seconds. Feel free to drop off if you don't have any questions. I hope I get a chance to talk to you and see you in a future event. Thank you. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Thank you, Ms. Willis. Thank you, Noni. All right, everyone have an amazing day. Thank you.